Hey photo world, welcome back to another episode here on TakeAndTalkPics.com. This is another episode from the former podcast. Please subscribe, hit that notification bell, and join the email list. Let's get to that 1,000 subscriber marker so that way I can add a new video every single week. Enjoy. Are you getting great resources from Take and Talk Pics podcast? Head to the website, takeandtalkpics.com. From there, please click on the iTunes button. That'll bring you to iTunes podcast page for Take and Talk Pics. I would love to see your support and 5-star rating. Also, please subscribe at takeandtalkpics.com for a chance to win an iTunes gift card. Hey photo world, welcome to Take and Talk Pics. This is episode 21 featuring Natalie Probst.
You say yes, and then you figure out how to do it afterwards, right?
Today's featured guest is Natalie Probst. Natalie is a professional wedding and editorial photographer based in Chicago. She has been published in local magazines and on multiple blogs. Natalie's editorial style shines through her wedding work and creates a mood that is truly captivating. Natalie, welcome to Take and Talk Pics.
Hi, how are you?
Doing well. I shared a little bit with Photo World about you and a tiny bit about your business. Can you expand upon it a little bit and share with us some more?
Yeah. So like you mentioned, I'm a full-time wedding and editorial photographer. I live in Chicago. I actually left a full-time photography job in September of 2013 to do freelance full-time. So yeah, I've been doing both wedding and I, like you mentioned, I work for a couple like local magazines and I shoot food, portraits, a bunch of different stuff, which is always fun. So it keeps it interesting between the wedding work and the editorial work.
I didn't know that you had a full-time photography job. Is it okay to say who that was with before?
It was with a luxury consignment shop. I'll actually probably talk about that later about how I transitioned. But
okay.
Yeah, so I shot product for them, tabletop stuff.
Well, to get the inspiration flowing a little bit here on Take and Talk Pics, I like it if the photographer who we're interviewing shares something about them in a way of a mantra or quote that they might live by. So that way it kind of gets us inspired for things we can try to put into practice.
Yeah, I'm really big into that kind of stuff. I love quotes and I love mantras. So there's a couple of things, and they might be pretty cliche, but they always come up in my day-to-day life. One of them is, life isn't about finding yourself, it's about creating yourself. And that one's kind of been with me since high school. I've always tried to evolve and never get stuck in one sort of area. I like to dabble in a lot of different things. So I like kind of going through life thinking like things could change tomorrow and that could totally be okay. Another one is leap and the net will appear. And that was really significant because like I said, I used to work for a luxury consignment shop and things were just, kind of stagnant. I wasn't really happy there. I wasn't really unhappy. I just was ready for a change. And right around that time that I was thinking I might make a change, I heard that quote, leap and the net will appear. Just take the jump and you'll figure it out. And to be quite honest, that's pretty much what happened with me. I was at work and they were making some changes that I just didn't think were really fitting to me or where I wanted to go. And that day I just decided, I think this is it. I think this is where I'm going to stop working here full time and see what I can take, where I can take myself, where I want to go. So, that was really significant. I actually hang it in my office and I look at it quite often. So it reminds me you don't have to have everything figured out, but if you just start the process, you'll eventually make your way and figure it out.
Leap and the net will appear. Photo world, if that doesn't get you excited and inspired, then, seriously, I don't know how it can't. It's awesome. So many business owners and entrepreneurs will tell you, just start. There's so many great ideas that never existed because they didn't even try. So right. Just start. Maybe you don't have all the answers, but that's how we learn and then you grow. And I think this is a great segue into really getting into the questions, diving into your story. What started to spark that interest enough to pursue photography as a career, as a freelancer?
Well, it started kind of in high school. I worked for a friend of the family, and he was a portrait photographer. So I worked there and really saw the ins and outs of his business. He was a great mentor. He was not afraid to tell you what he was doing and what worked and what didn't work. But at the time in high school, I thought I was going to be a fashion photographer. So, this portrait business was like, I was getting all of this great advice, but I was also like searching for something else at the same time, thinking like, oh, well, these two things are totally different, a portrait photographer and a fashion photographer. And really, everyone's businesses in some ways are really comparable, but I think having him as a mentor was a great introduction as to like, you could actually make this a full-time job. And so actually he had done weddings in the past, and I think he was maybe just a little burnt out by then. He didn't include that as part of his business anymore. He just focused on portraits, so families and seniors and babies. And at the time, I didn't really think that was what I was interested in. It wasn't until I got to like college that I actually started assisting fashion photographers and realizing at the same time, some of them were kind of burnt out by the travel and the high stakes of things. So I wasn't quite sure even in college, well, I thought I wanted to be this fashion photographer, but now it seems like their day-to-day life is really strenuous. And I didn't know if that's really what I wanted for my life. So leaving college, I worked for the luxury consignment shop and did product for them. And on the side, I had been asked to help another photographer shoot a wedding. And it was like, oh my gosh, this is like all of my loves in one. I can shoot the details, which I love, obviously, since I was doing product for the consignment company. And I got interaction with people, and I could still bring the fashion into it. So I think it all kind of came full circle, just realizing like, yeah, I think I can do this full time. And while I was at the consignment company, I was like, yeah, this is what I want to do. I want to be my own boss and have control over what projects I take on and things like that. So portrait photographer really like ignited things for me. But it's funny how how they constantly change, and you're like, I think I want to do this, but now I really like this. So I'd never thought I'd be a wedding photographer, to be quite honest, but I am, and I'm totally loving it.
For sure. And Photo World, it didn't just happen overnight. Natalie didn't wake up and say, that's it, I'm going to be a wedding photographer. Hooray, here we go. It was this marathon, one step after another, these different legs of her race that led her to this realization, this is what she's got to do. And through our work, through our journey, we have the beautiful fun. I'm also a wedding photographer for the most part. I do a lot of other things, but mostly weddings. And we learn a lot from our failures, learning the hard way. Can you share with Photo World a time where something just didn't go the way it should have, and you're better for it now, but you learned the hard way?
Well, I think honestly quitting my job was quite the learning experience. Like I said, I was there and there was a lot of changes. It was kind of like a startup company. It was very small. We were all there from pretty much the beginning. And so there was tons of changes that were happening. And I knew I wasn't going to stay there forever, but I also didn't really know what I was going to do. I didn't really think I had like the skills to start my own business necessarily, like right at that moment. But I kind of just went into work and things were happening, and I was like, I just can't see myself honestly working here anymore. It just doesn't seem like a good fit. So that was a learning experience, because I never thought I would really walk into work and quit my job, but that was pretty much what happened. I would never suggest that to anyone, but sometimes things just feel really right. And so I just kind of went on that. So having done that, I left like on a Tuesday, and on a Wednesday didn't have a job. So the learning experience there was you had to find where your next paycheck was coming from. Okay, so now I'm unemployed. What do I do now? So it was a positive and a negative in the same sense. I think there's no better motivation than when you have no other choice, right? So you have to kind of make things work. And in the same sense, I was totally living my dream. I had dreamed of like quitting my job and starting my own business since I was a kid, but I really didn't think on that Tuesday that was what was like going to happen,
Right.
Of course I had been planning, but not to the day or anything like that. So there definitely was some sort of like hustle involved. You had to kind of figure out, okay, well, how do I start a business, and how do I register my business name, and where am I going to get clients from, and how am I going to make money? What is my pricing structure going to look like? How am I going to run my business? So it was kind of like a failure, but I think that was the best decision, one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life, quite honestly. So failure, but a positive thing in the same sense. I mean, there was a lot to figure out, but it was all super exciting to me at the same time. I was like, woohoo, I'm the holder in my own life now. I kind of have to figure everything out on my own. So I don't know if that's really a failure, but a learning experience for sure. I mean, I'm still learning, having only owned my business for about a year and a half full time. So there's always a learning curve with that, and I'm still figuring those things out, like taxes and
Yeah.
accounting and all of those fun
I
things.
think it fits as a failure/learning moment. I mean, because it's not often that we get that gut feeling to go, okay, that's it, I'm walking away right here, right now. And then when you do, it may be the right thing to do, and it may feel like I followed my gut, that's fine. But that failure moment comes up right then and says, oh no, what just happened?
For sure.
But you took a leap, you threw it out there, and there was a net to catch you, and that was just your ambitions. That was everything in the back of your mind that's been planning for years leading to this moment. So it's not like you didn't have that safety net slowly building. It was just a matter of how the heck is it going to show up in time or right here, and you just push yourself into it. So I think it works, and I think it's really appropriate. What would you consider the most important practice of your photography? Is there one piece to your entire workflow from initial interaction and inquiry to the final delivery of their product?
Oh man, that's a tough one. I mean, I think managing client expectations is really important, like making sure that everyone is on the same page. I think when I started out, I just assumed that my clients knew, everything, and they knew what I was talking about, and they knew what was included in packages and things like that. But I think especially in wedding photography, most of the time it's the first time they're getting married. So they've never been through this process before. They don't know necessarily what digital files are or what to do with them, so they really need to kind of be walked through the process. So that's one thing I've really tried to do with clients, is make sure that we're always on the same page, that I'm always answering questions and letting them know what's next, because I think a lot of times they get nervous too, like, well, I haven't heard from them. What are they doing? And so it's always good to check in and say, hey, I'm going to, be reaching out to you. We need to set up your engagement session, or in a couple months, I'm going to send you a questionnaire to go over all the details of your day so I know what you have planned thus far and what I can expect. So managing client expectations is really important to me, just to make sure we all know what's going on and what's coming up next. I think another thing is just like in general, just getting things right in camera has really helped me. I think when I first started out, I was like, oh, no worries, just keep shooting. I'll figure it out later. And then I realized I'm really not that good at Photoshop. I'm not really that great at, fixing those things. I might not even know how to fix those things. So recognizing your strengths and weaknesses and realizing, I really need to get that right in camera before I keep, shooting 50 frames of whatever it is, making sure that my settings are correct before I continue. So that's been super helpful. Also saves a ton of time, as everyone knows.
Yeah, two great takeaways and all that. And one, just keeping up that communication with your clients is huge. You're right. Most of them don't know the process, and they haven't done this before. They might have done a little research before selecting you, but that's as far as it got. So you do have to walk them through it a little bit and make sure that you're kind of a part of it. When it comes down to it, the photographer typically spends more time with the bride on her wedding day than the man she's marrying. It's a weird phenomenon, but that's true. And you're shoving a camera in their face all day long. They need to be comfortable with you, and you need to become their friend along the way. Whatever level you want, that's up to you, but it's that communication that's going to help that. So I really loved hearing all that. And then the other one was getting it right in camera is huge. I mean, with RAW these days, we have such great latitude with our images, but if you get it right in camera, you have that much more latitude to play with the images, create your effects, whatever it is your style caters to. But it's not, you can fix it in Photoshop. So Photo World, two huge things to take away from that, and I love them both. And we have a wide range of photographers listening. Natalie, could you please share with Photo World one thing you think could lead to growth and success in a photography business, regardless of the current level?
I think the number one thing that has catapulted my business was networking with other photographers, hands down. that was the first thing I did when I quit my job, to be quite honest. I was like contacting people, anyone in the wedding industry, because I knew that that was where I wanted to go. Just, emailing them. I had never met them. Just, hey, do you want to meet up for coffee? Can we meet for breakfast? I'd love to chat about what you do and your business and tell you a little bit about me and see if, oftentimes I was trying to connect with them too to see if I could either shadow, or we call it like second shooting, which is being a second photographer on the wedding day. So I would say that for sure, because last year I second shot like 30 plus weddings. Obviously, I quit my job. I had to find clients. I had to figure out how to manage a business, and that was not something I could necessarily research. I had to be there on a wedding day to see how like the wedding day unfolds, and the more experience I got in that, the better I would be at my own business. So having a community of people that I still second shoot with, I still meet for drinks. I mean, these people have become my friends, and they've been great in passing me referrals, giving me advice, critiquing my work. So I will be forever in debt to those people. But I would say networking for sure. Just having a community that you can bounce ideas off of. A lot of that is even online too. We have Facebook groups that we just, hey, I'm having this problem. Does anyone know what's going on? Have you come across this? And tons of people will fill in and just say, oh, I've been there. This is what I did. So having that as a resource has been super helpful. And also, like I said, referrals too. When I was starting out, I was at a totally different price bracket than the people that I was networking with. So naturally, if they got someone that didn't fit within their budget, they would oftentimes send them to me. So that was like great for me, just to have those referrals, to just get the ball rolling, to get some clients. I mean, when I got my first client, I was like running around the block, like I was so excited. So having them has been super, super helpful.
Network, that's going to lead to some growth and success. And today, Photo World, you're hanging out with Natalie and Rob, and you're networking with us, whether we're talking directly to you or you're answering back through your stereo or whatever. You're here, you're learning, and it's totally worth it. Natalie, have you had an aha moment during your career when shooting or just in your business practices, it just hit you, this light bulb went off, yes, this is it, this is what I got to do next?
Well, honestly, finding weddings just as a whole was kind of like an aha moment for me, because ironically, my mom had always said, you should do wedding photography. I think you'd really like it. And in my head, I don't know why, but in my head, it was something that was like really, really formal, not so creative. I was thinking of like the images from like the 1980s, like my aunt's wedding photography, my mom's wedding photography, which is totally great in its own right, but I just didn't think there was like a ton of creativity involved with it. I thought it was a lot more standard and formal. So when I started photographing the second shooter with this other photographer, it was like, oh my God, like my mind was blown. So much more creative than what I thought. They're really like the sky was the limit, kind of. I mean, the clients were asking for that creativity, which I always thought was kind of the opposite. Like, oh, they wanted these standard shots, and they were hiring him because of his creativity. So I think realizing that wedding photography combined all of my loves into one was kind of an aha moment. And for a while, I didn't really know what area of photography I would go into. I didn't know if that would be portraits or newborns or families or, the fashion photography. And so finding weddings was kind of like all of those things in one. And at the same time, I still do a lot of those other things. Like I still work with the magazines to kind of fulfill that like passion side of things, those projects that are, exciting and fun that aren't necessarily like the biggest paying client. So I do kind of a mix of those things. But yeah, I think that was kind of an aha moment.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. I mean, it happened to me early in my photography, but a lot of wedding photographers, before getting there, they had this like negative connotation about how it goes down. It's kind of like, that's the one where I'll settle and I'll do it if I have to because I have no choice. I don't know what it is, because weddings are a blast. They're so much fun. Yeah. They're wildly different than what you think they are, and you have to know studio lighting right then and there. You have to know location, portrait lighting, and posing, and doing detail and macro and photojournalistic, documentary. You got to do it all in a short time, quickly, and it just keeps you running. And then every single wedding wants to make it their own, so they're all different, which makes it even better.
Right.
It's just so weird how we think one thing and then we get there and we're like, this is actually awesome. Like, why didn't I know
Right.
about this? Who's been keeping this secret?
I totally agree.
Natalie, can you share with Photo World a time where you had an I made it moment as a photographer? If you can break it down to a story or bring us to that time in your life where you just kind of had this little highlight moment where, yes, I'm doing it. I made it.
I feel like I have those all the time. They're on a weekly basis with me, which I think is a good thing because I am constantly like surprised and excited about the work that I do. I mean, what's funny is a story comes to mind when I was in college. So I went to Michigan State University and I studied photography there. I had one of my professors was my mentor, and he had sent out this email about a guy coming into town and he needed an assistant. And I really hadn't done much assisting on that level quite yet. I had done it for the portrait photographer in high school, but he and I had like a personal relationship. I knew him outside of that. He was a friend of the family, so there was pressure, but I never was as nervous as like, oh my gosh, this is someone I've never met before. So he sent out this email looking for a photographer or an assistant, and I was like so nervous, but I just said I would do it. And ironically, I was the only one, come to find out later, that had responded to this email out of my class. No one else wanted to assist. I get an email from the photographer, and the shoot was in Detroit, and it was of a musician, and come to find out it was a shoot with Kid Rock. And so I was like totally blown away. I mean, I'd never worked on anything like this in my life. And thankfully, the photographer was super welcoming and nice, and there was not much knowledge that I needed to have prior to. He kind of just wanted you to be like his right-hand man, to move things, turn things on, adjust. So it was a great introduction to that level of shoot. But I actually, being so nervous and trying to be super on time, I got to the shoot, which is at a warehouse that Kid Rock owns. His band practices there. He has cars there, whatever. So I got there about a half an hour early because I just was so afraid of being late. So I walked into this warehouse and just kind of like, sat off to the side, trying to be out of the way. And his band actually had rehearsal. So I like sat in on this rehearsal with Kid Rock, and it was like my own private concert. And I just remember sitting there. I mean, I'm like 20 years old thinking, this is it. Like, I've made it. Like, I'm sitting in on this shoot, and it's like, I thought it was so cool. I mean, it was such a fun shoot, and I'll never forget that. So even a small assisting gig turned out to be like one of the coolest moments of my life. But even now, I think seeing my work in print is like just equally as exciting. When I used to work a lot with Today's Chicago Woman, and unfortunately they have decided to stop publishing their magazine. But I could walk in my neighborhood and grab the magazine out of the box. And so flipping the page and seeing my work was like super exciting, and it's still super exciting. So I think I have those moments all the time. If you don't have those like exciting moments, I don't know, it would be hard. It'd be hard to like go day to day. But for me, I think there's always something new happening, and that's really what I like about it. Like being a freelance photographer is that things are always changing. Like you said, weddings are always different. There's no day to day that's the same, really. So yeah, I think having those I made it moments is important. Even celebrating the small successes,
Yeah, it's those little victories that kind of shine and create a career to look back on, So it's really nice to have those. And I think one great takeaway, not so much the fact that I'm super jealous that in your first assisting gig, you got to sit in on a Kid Rock concert, private concert in their warehouse. But you were the only one to respond to the offer of needing an assistant. And I find that I teach at a community college out here in Illinois, in Glen Ellen. And I find that with many of the students in the photography program there, that when the offer's put out there, so few of them respond at all. I mean, it makes it easy for the ones that do, because then they get selected because the lottery's thin there, it's easier. It's just fascinating to me how many people are so frightened by failure that they don't even take the risk. It's just go for it, just go for it. Take a leap, the net will appear. I really think that's coming full circle over and over, and I love it. Natalie, during your photography career so far, what is the best advice you've ever received?
Well, I think that quote was very important. That wasn't advice necessarily given to me, but it was something that I heard that like really stuck with me. Leap and the net will appear. I think another thing is just to do things that scare you? Like you just said, no one else responded to that inquiry, which I just found so shocking. But even myself, I mean, I sat there and like doubted, should I do this? Should I respond? You know, what if I don't know what the photographer is asking? And what if I look like an idiot? And then I just was like, and I'll just respond. And I actually thought everyone else has probably already responded, so there's no way that I'm going to like get this gig. I had the intention that I was already going to be rejected. So I was like, well, I'll just put myself out there because I already know what's coming. Little did I know I was the only one to respond and I would get the job. But last year, I have a friend. She's super positive and she makes kind of a mantra for every year. So around New Year's, she'll make like a quote for the year that she's going to live her life by. And so I was really inspired by that. And so last year it was do things that scare you. So I wasn't always like the yes man per se, but I was always like, if this makes me nervous, maybe I should just do it because what's the worst that's going to happen? And so getting over that fear of being rejected, which is going to happen all of the time in your life and throughout your business, was really important to me to just get out there and network. And even just talking to people can be super nerve-wracking. And that really helped me have more confidence in my business. Just meeting people, talking confidently about what I was doing and what I wanted to do really helped. Like I said, I took on 30 plus second shooting gigs. So in total with my own work, I did like 42, 43 weddings last year. And typically that's a lot. I mean, that's a lot for me, especially in my first kind of rookie year. But I was like, what do I have to lose? I mean, I got like, let's go full force and see what happens. And if at the end of the year I don't like it, then that's great. I've kind of figured that out. I didn't waste 10 years of my life trying something that I wasn't crazy about. And at the end of the year, I luckily came out and was like, this is awesome. Like, I love this. So doing things that scare you, I think, is really important because there was another quote, I'm trying to think of it, like nothing good ever comes from a place of like, I'm totally blanking. But anywho, having that faith in yourself to just get over fear will totally change your life, I think, and your business. Fear kind of holds people back. So having the guts to just say, yeah, I'm going to do it. Maybe it won't work out, but that's not the worst that's going to happen. I'm going to survive and and hopefully learn something.
I mean, photo world, the worst you can hear is no. I mean, that's the worst that can happen.
Right.
You put yourself out there, or you ask, or you try to follow somebody's footsteps a little bit or learn from someone else. The worst you'll hear is no.
Right.
If that hurts, that's okay. I get it. I mean, we're all understanding of that feeling, but it's really not a big deal. You just got to look past it and move on. So there's so much out there. Just take it as it comes and try it. Try something new. Try things that scare you. I really like that. Natalie, if you had to start your photography all over, you have the same gear and knowledge that you currently have today, but there's no business, no website, no portfolio. What's the first thing you would do to start your new photography business?
Well, I kind of did this, right? I mean, I kind of had to start my business back in September of 2013 from scratch. And although I had been freelancing since college, I mean, it was a totally different realm. So I feel like I've reiterated this point a couple of times, but networking is totally the number one thing I would do. Reaching out to people to get connected, for sure. Like I said, take them to coffee or meet for lunch, whatever it is, to just kind of start the conversation and get the ball rolling and seeing how they started their business.
If photo world you're starting or you've kind of hit a plateau, maybe it's time to start networking again, or network to begin with, and see what else you can do with it and learn from your community. So right. I think that's a great way to do it. And I'm not worried about you repeating it. It's a really important piece, Do you have an app or an internet resource that you use that you think photo world could benefit from knowing about?
This is it's not really new anymore, but I started using Photo Mechanic to call my weddings, and wow, that changed things for me a lot. It's so much faster than what I was doing before, which was like in Bridge, and I'd star things, but Photo Mechanic just generates these previews super fast. So now I can call a wedding in like 45 minutes, like an hour depending, so that's been super helpful.
Yeah, that's the number I keep hearing when people bring up Photo Mechanic. They're saying, I can get it down to like 40, 45 minutes now, and it's just awesome. And I think that's huge because the most valuable thing we have is time. So if we're going to eat it up for 2-3 hours going through, putting everything in Lightroom and calling it there, that'd be difficult, and doing it through Bridge and then creating a separate folder, then putting it in Lightroom or whatever. Like, there's just too many steps. So Photo Mechanic is a really good tool for that, to call your wedding, then move on with your processing.
Right.
Natalie, aside from your camera bodies, what is the most important piece of gear that you could just not live without?
You know what's funny is I have this 85 lens that was like a $400. I mean, it's the cheapest lens that I own. But I love that thing. I mean, I use it all of the time. I use it for details. I use it for portraits. So,
is this the 85 1.8?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
For Nikon or Canon, or what do you
Canon.
use? Canon. Okay. Nice.
Yeah. So that has been super helpful. I don't know. I love that lens. So that's my favorite lens, I think.
Being Canon, I'm not Canon, I'm Nikon, but you being Canon, don't try the 1.2. You'll just be too hooked, and it's way too expensive.
Oh no. Okay.
Or maybe try it and go for it, because seriously, Nikon is totally missing it there, not having the f1.2. That thing is beautiful. I'm a Nikon guy, but I've played with it, and oh my gosh, it'll blow your mind. But I hear the 85 a lot. It's a really great focal length to just have enough distance between you and your subject, keeping that shallow depth of field, but it's still personal. You're close with that 85. So it is a great portrait lens and a great wedding lens. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing sharper than a prime. So, I mean, that right there too. Can you share with Photo World one parting piece of guidance, the best way that we can reach you, whether it be social media or your website, whatever, and then we'll say goodbye.
Sure. My parting piece of guidance is to do things that scare you. I think that's like a really important thing to kind of live your life by. If you're not doing things that make you nervous or that are out of your comfort zone, I don't know if you'll ever grow. So yeah, I would say do things that scare you this year and commit to it. Like don't let the fear overtake you and then you're like, well, no, I'll let that job pass, but I'll get the next one. Just grab a hold of it and commit. My Facebook page is Natalie Probst Photography. My email, if you want to email me, is natalie@natalieprobst.com. And I'm pretty active on Instagram. I would say that's like my favorite social media. And that's just Natalie Probst. So yeah, reach out.
And Photo World, you know well that we'll have all of these links, her social media and website links, on her show notes page in takingtalkpics.com. Just put in the search bar Natalie and her show notes will pop right up.
Cool.
Natalie, I cannot thank you enough for your time today and sharing such great value. Photo World thanks you, and happy shooting.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. This was fun.
Thank you, Photo World, for tuning in to another great episode here on Take and Talk Pics. I hope you got the amazing value that I did out of this episode in interviewing our featured photographer for today. If you'd like to learn more about this photographer and the other photographers that we have interviewed in the past, head to takeandtalkpics.com.